I'm Ric Edelman. Which is the more profitable way to invest, buying an index fund or just one stock? And tax law has changed about charitable gifts. Also, should you invest in a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA? And Jean will come and talk with us about how to eat an elephant. All that and more on this edition of The Truth About Money.
This program is funded in part by TD Ameritrade. At TD Ameritrade, we support investors and independent registered investment advisors every day, providing access to tools, research, and educational resources that help you pursue your goals with confidence.
I'm Ed Burns. I've spent a lot of time around cameras. However, I've never actually swallowed one before. Till now. It's a camera the size of a pill that lets your doctor see inside of you. That's kind of awesome.
Technology is evolving. We believe the way to invest should evolve as well. A prospectus is available at 1-800-iShares, which includes investment objectives, risks, fees, expenses, and other information that you should read and consider carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal.
I'm Ric Edelman. I'll bet you routinely give to charity, but do you give because it's the right thing to do, or only because you get a tax break? To me, the answer makes dollars and cents.
My question is, what is the effect of the new legislation on charitable giving?
Well, it depends on the perspective of your question. If you're wondering, will the reduced tax deductibility of charitable donations cause people to reduce their charitable giving, I would say no. It's not going to have any impact at all. For the fundamental reason is that I don't believe that the average American is making donations to charity solely in order to get a tax deduction. I think Americans are the most generous people on the planet. We donate to charity because we know that it's necessary. We know they need our help, and we are warm, generous people. The fact that we get a tax deduction for our donation, well, hey, that's very nice of the government to provide us that, but it's really irrelevant. Now, maybe your question was, what's the impact on you personally? Because you might not be able to take as much of a deduction as you did in the past, and it depends on a variety of circumstances. How much money do you earn? How much money are you donating to charity? And what is the nature of those gifts? Are those gifts cash, or are they something else? For example, are you donating artwork, or are you donating property? There are differences depending on those questions about whether or not you are personally going to be affected. The short answer is you need to talk to a tax advisor who can examine your own personal financial situation and run what we call a pro forma tax return, a what-if scenario, to answer the question for you. If you were to donate certain assets or certain values of assets, what would be the impact on your own personal tax return? And that can help guide you as to the most efficient, effective way that you can not only support the charity, but you can also benefit yourself. In other words, it is possible under the tax law to do good while doing well. And here's another question that just makes dollars and cents.
I'm a teacher for public schools, and I am wondering who I could go to for financial guidance on investing and making the most of your money in the long run.
A financial planner. You want to be careful, though, because there are a lot of people who call themselves financial planners, and what they really are product-pushing, commission-based salespeople instead. So here's how you do it. You want to talk to someone who is a registered investment advisor or someone who works for a RIA. A registered investment advisor is someone who is registered with the SEC or one of the states, and by law, we are legally required to be a fiduciary, meaning we are legally required to serve your best interests. That's not true for stockbrokers or insurance agents or bank personnel. They do not adhere to the fiduciary standard, which means their legal obligation is to their employer, not to you. You want to talk to someone who is a registered investment advisor, who is fee-based, not commission-based, and who is independent and objective. You want to avoid people who make a living selling products like investments or insurance, because there's an inherent conflict of interest there. It's really that simple. By interviewing 2 or 3 different advisors, you're sure to be able to find one who meets your needs best. From California's movie studios to New York's theater district, we recently asked just one question, Celebrity Edition. What is the best advice to give kids about money?
I could give some advice to my daughter. I don't think it makes any difference. What I would like to her is to destroy your credit card, because that little piece of plastic, you know, takes you away from the money itself, and you tend to spend too much with this, you know. But I would not advise my wife, but she's very good.
My father was always hysterical around money, and that's not a good basis to come from. I think if you're teaching children, when it comes to money, finances, anything with numbers, you want to be very, very calm. It has to be a very loving kind of action.
Here's a great investment question I got from a senior at Roger Williams University.
Mr. Edelman, fund managers typically they try and outperform the market by market timing. As a young investor, would you recommend just going out and buying the market itself instead of trying to outperform by picking individual stocks with products such as exchange-traded funds out there?
Our investment management approach is through asset allocation. We'll decide based on a client's circumstances, predominantly their risk tolerance and their time horizon, how much risk to put into the portfolio, and that will determine how much of their portfolio goes into stocks. Once we make that asset allocation decision, and we decide, for example, that you need to have a certain amount of your money in large cap value, we will then want to buy full exposure to large cap value as inexpensively as we possibly can. And expenses come in 2 forms. One is the investment manager's fee. Second is the amount of turnover in that fund. Because the more turnover, meaning the more often that manager buys and sells, the more commissions they're going to incur, the more trading expenses they're going to incur, and the more of those expenses, the higher your total costs. So we want to use a manager who's extraordinarily cheap. We're typically paying 20 or 30 basis points, maybe 40 basis points. Some managers charge 200 basis points, or 2% per year. We want to use managers that are 1/10 as expensive. And second, we want those managers to trade very seldom. We want managers to buy securities and hold them for years so that their turnover is 3% or 5%. Some managers have turnover of 200%, meaning they're flipping the portfolio every 6 months, which means they're doubling, quadrupling their trading expenses. Between their high fee and the high trading expenses they're putting on me, boy, they better earn an awful lot more than the market average to compensate for those high expenses. Are they likely to be able to do it? No. So we're going to choose exchange-traded funds and certain institutional funds that, in fact, are going to be very low in cost, very low in turnover, so that we're far more likely to get the returns we want. And, oh, by the way, we'll do it with less risk.
Thank you.
So, yes.
So, yes.
Use exchange-traded funds that are broad-based, that have very low management costs and very low turnover. And here's another question from a student at Roger Williams University.
Do you have a guideline for graduates in terms of, you know, when they're planning and you're getting a new job, you're moving to a different city or town and you need to find a place to live? Do you have a percentage of your salary that you think should go to rent and that should go to other expenses that you know you're going to incur, like transportation, whether you need to, you know, lease or buy a car or, you know, get a pass for a subway or something?
No more than 30% of your income should go toward housing. Very often, kids fresh out of college want to move into an apartment by themselves. It might not be realistic to do that. You might need to look at a place where you're renting or sharing an apartment with others. Bottom line is, the less you obligate your income to rent payments, the better off you're going to be. Rent is the number one expense you'll incur, and you need to minimize the expense as much as you can and maximize your flexibility. If you're going to move into an apartment with others, either try to keep your name off the lease, meaning you want to be a sub-lessee to someone else so that you have greater flexibility in moving out, and you reduce the risk that if they move out on you, you're not stuck with that total rent until you find another roommate, or co-sign with the others so that you have an equal liability. And you need to do credit checks on them. How stable is their income? If they run out of money, do they have a support network, meaning parents, who will help bail them out if they lose their income or they become spendthrifts and don't have the money to pay rent and so on. Figure out who's going to collect the rent money and who's going to make the payment. What happens if you pay your share of the rent to the landlord, but your roommates do not? Are you on the hook anyway for that? Or if you give your rent money to your roommate and your roommate squanders it, what liability do you still have? So you want to look at it from a worst case scenario to try to minimize your risks associated with it, and beyond all else, minimize your liability and minimize your exposure.
Which should you do first? A, contribute to your retirement plan at work, or B, pay off your credit cards. We'll be right back with the answer.
The technologist will see you now? Physicist and nanotech developer George Skidmore tells us that doctors are being replaced by technologists.
I think that students that are being educated at medical schools today they're being trained on all the sensor capabilities and all of the technology that's available. And they will be the ones that are more keen to adopt it. There are research level tattoo sensors that can monitor your temperature or your...
What do you mean by a tattoo sensor?
The tattoo sensor the tattoo is really just more of those carnival-like tattoos.
Well, I used to get as a kid. Used to
So
put it on and...
Exactly. So you get a color tattoo and you put it on. There's serious research now in tattoo-type sensors that you would put on that could then monitor your body temperature, could monitor your heart rate, maybe your blood pressure, and maybe some other things.
And is this also a generational shift where it's older physicians who have been practicing for 20, 30 years having a different view than those who are in medical school today?
I certainly hope so.
That would suggest that you may see a delay in the adoption of the technology, but it seems otherwise inevitable.
I definitely think it's inevitable.
What option does the doctor have but to do what the patient is wanting?
I think we'll find out. I think some doctors will still want to make their own diagnoses. And if we don't confront that as part of the reality of technology adoption, we're just picking a fight that we shouldn't pick. We should find a way to have the doctors welcome the technology.
And isn't that true across the entire range of technology, that it's one nifty thing for the scientist to say, wow, look what I can do, but quite another for the end user to say, wait a minute, look what you're doing.
Yeah, technologists always want to push their technology. They always see only the good part of it, and they always push it as if it's going to do a lot of good things. And of course it will, but it's going to take more than that. The consumer needs to carefully, I guess, listen to the technology.
Is there being effort spent by the technologists to adapt consumers to what I would call the ergonomics side of it? It's one thing to build a chair, but it's another to get people willing to sit in that chair. So is there as much attention being devoted to that side of the equation?
I think there always is, secondarily. So initially, inertial sensors might be our good example. They were a technology being pushed out. Consumers had no idea what they were good for. But they knew that when their car crashed, Their car could sense that it was crashing and launch an airbag. And that was all based on inertial sensing. That was, the consumer didn't need to understand the technology behind it.
They just understood the benefit.
They just understood the benefit. So I think that's kind of always going to be the case, because as a technologist, it's very hard not to get very wrapped up in the technology you're developing. I'm still a very hands-on scientific developer. And so I worry about, can I make this technology just work? And I'm so glad when that finally happens. And then you move to, can I make it work well? Can I make it work every time? Can I make it work for this amount of money? Can I get it out into the field in a way that's going to get used because it's affordable? So you need to make it transparent and easy for the consumer so that they don't feel threatened.
From robots to 4D printing, each week on The Truth About Money, we'll examine the financial implications of technologies like these and how they are reshaping our world.
Which should you do first? The answer is A, contribute to your retirement plan at work. If you don't start saving for retirement until after you pay off your debts, you'll reach retirement with nothing saved.
Saving for retirement is the best thing you can do for your future. But you also have to consider how to save, where to invest, and what problems can come up down the road. These are the kinds of issues I help people solve every week. Let's talk with Laura. She's in Chicago. Hi, Laura. How are you?
Fine. Thank you so much. Great show. I'm enjoying it.
Oh,
I have two questions, if I may, but one is very, very important. This week, I took my 2 checks from previous 401k distribution, and one is a pre-tax and another one is after tax.
Okay.
So the pre-tax I would like to put in a regular IRA.
Mm-hmm.
After tax money I would like to put to Roth IRA. And my question is, will I face any tax implications? And I did talk to a few tax advisors.
All right, let me stop you.
They don't know for sure.
Well, then they're not very good tax advisors. I mean, the whole point is
they were sure.
We would have said go talk to a tax advisor.
Yeah. Well, if you don't know, look it up.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, I mean, come on, that's really, so you need to get a better tax advisor. So here's the situation. You guys give me the 2 answers. First, we have a rollover from a retirement account. Rolling that over to an IRA makes perfect sense.
Yes.
But she's got an after-tax retirement account. What about rolling that to a Roth IRA?
Here's the problem. Let's assume for a minute that the pre-tax is $50,000 and the after-tax is $50,000.
Mm-hmm.
If you say, okay, well, wait a minute, I'm just going to move the after-tax because I don't have any taxes to pay, the IRS is going to say not so fast, and they're going to look at the total value. And they'll do the proportion. So
Right.
50% would be taxable and 50% would not be taxable.
Right. You see, this is one of the conundrums. You can't segregate IRA money or retirement account money that way. The IRS is looking at it as a total bucket, making it much more complicated.
Yeah, so the after-tax check, you might be able to make a contribution of $6,000 or $6,500 to a Roth IRA. But to roll it, you're not going to be able to do. So you could take the after-tax money. There's no tax implications for receiving it, and just put a contribution in if you want to.
And it's so funny because I would follow that up with, and to be sure you do it right, see a tax advisor.
But not the ones you've reached out to already.
I mean, that is so frustrating that she did everything right.
But it's really common for a tax advisor to say, well, let me check the regs. But
yes.
But for
go ahead and check the regs.
Yeah, but for an advisor to simply say, "Oh, I don't know."
Yeah.
Well, go get another advisor. I mean, we work really hard with our advisors in our firm. There are 2 sentences that we use, I think, an awful lot. The first sentence is,
"It depends."
The second is,
"Let me check."
Exactly. It's really, and this ain't all that hard. I don't know. Let me find out. I mean, it's for a professional to say, I don't know, you're on your own. I mean, that's, well, tell me again why I'm paying you, whatever it is I'm paying you. I mean, it's just rather silly. So, Laura, you did everything correct. You went and sought professional advice. When you failed to get an answer that you were satisfied with, You went elsewhere for professional advice. That's what led you to us, and that's exactly what you need to be doing. Unfortunately, calling us on the radio isn't sufficient because we don't have a client professional relationship here on the air. So that's what you really need to do. And keep in mind, as we have suggested, that the answer is more complicated than, unfortunately, you would really want to hear. As a financial advisor, I believe managing money is no laughing matter, but comics at New York's Dangerfield's Comedy Club have a different take on personal finance.
Remember when your class had a party and your mother gave you that no-frill soda and everybody in the class wanted to talk about what they brought? Psst, JP, see the cheese doodles? I bought those. Psst, JP, yeah. See the Oreos? Yeah, I bought those. What you bought, JP? You see the soda? The Pepsi? No. The one that say soda. You ain't even know what flavor it was till you open it. It's grape. It's grape soda. Somebody want grape soda? I knew I was broke growing up.
If you could ask a financial advisor just one question, what would it be? Here's one we hear from a lot of people. What estate planning mistakes do you commonly see people make?
Typically, when someone's doing an estate plan, they go through the whole gamut. They sit with the attorney, establish the trust, but they often will forget that last step in having their accounts re-registered into the trust. So they've gone through all of this hassle of setting up the trust, but they never actually put anything into it.
Yeah, it's one of the areas people don't like to talk about, obviously, our mortality. So we basically recognize a lot of times people come in and they may have not had anything in order. They don't have any estate planning documents in place. And we ask them why, and they, yeah, you know, I've been thinking about it for a while, just never got around to doing it. We recognize we need to do it. So not having it in order, we make sure they do. And then the other thing, too, is as your life evolves and things change, you need to make sure your beneficiary designations are updated on your retirement accounts at work and other accounts you have outside of work. Perhaps they may have set up a trust, but haven't had the trust funded. So maybe perhaps they have the trust, but their accounts are not registered in the name of the trust. So that doesn't really help if something were to happen.
We get really boggled up with all the other ins and outs of life, so we really never have time to teach the kids, save our own money, review our estate planning. It's always on the back burner, and that's what financial planning is. Bring financial planning to the front burner, have a family discussion. If you need help, contact a good financial advisor. And the kids of the sandwich generation should also know that, hey, mom and dad have X amount coming in, not necessarily the amount, but X amount, and we have X bills. And we save, and so should you. If you need help, contact a good financial advisor.
Life is always changing, but one of the constants, as my wife and business partner Jean will tell you, is the need for moderation. Here's the other side of money.
We try to do so much and just to extremes. I want to lose 10 pounds, therefore I'm going to eat grapefruit for 5 weeks. You know, it just doesn't work that way. Or we want to be a bodybuilder and have to do, you know, 100 hours of exercise every week. Moderation, everything. It's an elephant, one bite at a time. It doesn't matter what it is. Any life goal, it's one bite at a time. It's one day at a time. It's an hour at a time. Just taking a break, take a step back, and just look at it that way. We just want to take a healthier look at how we're going to achieve our goal, whatever it is that we're trying to accomplish. We just need to break it down into something that's doable. You can't paint a house in a day. You can't build a church in a month. You know, you need to have a long-term plan, a long-term goal of accomplishing whatever it is that you want to accomplish. Maybe you're working on a project and you know, you can give it 10 minutes a day. Well, you know what? By the end of the week or the end of the month, that project will be done. We stress ourselves out by trying to put too much in too little time with very unrealistic deadlines. If we can break it down and we can just bite off a little bit each day, we would be happier. I think we'd have a much happier life. And that's the goal.
Thanks, Jean, for reminding us that this TV show is more personal than finance. And that's our show for today. I'm Ric Edelman for The Truth About Money. See you next time. To learn more about the topics we discussed on this episode and a chance to ask your questions, visit our website at truthaboutmoneytv.com. And stay connected by liking us on Facebook and following us on Twitter.